Pod tonight, just Andrew and Matt. The other two losers are too busy having a life on this Friday, but we're bringing you the ALDS recap and ALCS preview. Yankees Astros, just like everyone predicted it would be, just about all season long. I don't even know what number episode this is right now. Probably something I should have thought about, but here we are. We're ready to go and get into the ALCS preview.
What's up? This is the matchup everyone thought, like you said, this is a matchup everyone thought, the destiny that we all saw us heading towards. So might as well get on with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I might as well go through the quick 3-game hit in like against Minnesota. The only league division series that went in and out in 3 games. The other 3 all stretched to 5 games, so the Yankees got to feel pretty good about themselves. First time in Major League history, a 100-win team was swept out of the first round of the playoffs. Of course, it comes at the hands of another 100-win team. But, I mean, what a battle we thought this was going to be. The 2 most prolific home run hitting teams in Major League history. And, I mean, I thought this was the year that the Twins were finally going to, really give us some trouble. Not that I necessarily thought we were going to lose, but, I mean, I really thought this was the year that, like, we're going to have to battle through. And it's same as always, right? 3 games in, 3 games out, 3 wins, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was confident, but I was nervous. Like this Twins team, we were talking about it the other day, like this Twins team, you think of the Twins and you're just like, oh, this is the team, right? The Yankees walk over the Twins all the time. Like, but this was a really good Twins team, and not just because they hit a lot of home runs. Like a lot of people in the league are hitting a lot of home runs. Like that's a key part of their game. But like, they had Berrios, they had Jake Odorizzi, like they had good players. They were a solid team. And like we saw in Minnesota earlier this season, um, they hit bombs. Like if they get hot for a couple of games, they could do to the Yankees kind of exactly what the Nationals did to the Dodgers, right? The lower seed, but they could sneak up on you and steal the series in a short series. So it's, the Yankees were better, and thankfully they played good baseball and were able to get out of there in 3 games.
Yeah, and even if you look at what Tampa Bay did against Houston, right? I mean, it's the same thing we did against Cleveland 2 years ago. You go on the road, you drop the first 2 games, but I mean, Minnesota had their opportunities in that 3rd game. I mean, had they pulled out, I mean, they had people on base every inning, and good on Severino for battling. I mean, he looked very good. I mean, there was some tough breaks, some tough calls on the corner that may could have gone his way. I think some of the guys got on base were, like hard hit balls that kind of got through the hole, got through shifts, whatnot. But he did a good job buckling down and not allowing them to gain momentum because that crowd was loud. They were ready to erupt. And who knows what happens if they steal game 3 at home. I mean, now you're setting up. We win the next game, and we're back in a winner take all scenario. And the Yankees, they didn't let it happen. You had big hits from Didi and Gardner and Gleyber Torres' home run to open it up. And I mean, again, we said that we were expecting more from the Twins, not because we didn't have faith in the Yankees, but because this is the best Twins team the Yankees have ever faced in the playoffs, dating back to 2003 when we faced them in the LDS or the wild card game. I think this was a team that could have done the most damage. And the fact that we were able to win in 3 games is absolutely impressive. And I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, that was definitely great. Severino, I'll say just a little bit, our review before we preview, but like Severino, his stuff was really good, and I feel like he's, I mean, it's his what 4th, 5th start of the season. Like he's still really early on. There's still probably some rust to knock off. Like the walks, obviously, especially against Houston, it's not what you're gonna want to see. I'm channeling my Joe Girardi, but like all the pitchers, right? Tanaka, Paxton, like everyone was just solid. And I think that this was not to discredit them and say it was a tune-up, but like to play a good team and beat them soundly on all fronts was good on like the eve of a series against what's going to be a really difficult opponent. We're all assuming. But I mean, it's not too much more you could say, right? They swept the series. They they just played really good baseball, and that's gonna get you pretty far in a lot of scenarios. We can hope that they just keep going.
Right, and a couple things that stood out to me in that series. Um, I'll do three good and one not so good. Um, Three hitters that absolutely looked dialed in, even though the results didn't necessarily show for all of them. Edwin Encarnacion came right off the injured list and started raking. He had two doubles in game one. I think he ended the series with 5 or 6 hits, got on base, maybe with a couple extra walks as well. I mean, he looked like he didn't miss a beat, right? He missed the last 10, 15 games of the regular season, and he looked completely fine. So that's a
He
guy
was
who
ripping the
you
ball, yeah,
continue to,
absolutely.
yeah, you have confidence in him moving forward, and that's an impact back we didn't have when we faced Houston 2 years ago. Gary Sanchez, I think he faced 28 pitches in 4 at-bats in that Game 3 win. I don't believe he even got on base once, but when he's seen ball like that,
Did he
you
have
know
that
that he's getting close.
like one hard hit single, either that or in game two? But he had one pretty hard hit single, I think.
Right, right. But I mean, he's taking pitches. He's not swinging out of his shoes. I mean, that's good. That's good news for a really, really well pitched, Houston Astros team, and they're I would say the best pitching staff in the American League, arguably them or Tampa. But having Gary locked in is going to be huge, and also Didi Gregorius. I know there's a talk that everyone wanted him benched. You play Luke Voigt at first, you move DJ to second, Glaber to short. And I know we were all on the pod here in favor of playing Didi, and I feel so vindicated that he came through the way he did. I mean, he has the playoff pedigree that, I mean, I didn't expect him to be a 500 hitter, to hit 3 home runs, and he didn't do that, but he came through with big hits. And then one guy who I'm a little concerned about going into the next series is Adam Ottavino, who just did not look good. He didn't really look great at the end of the season either, but um, also Boone kind of made him like a righty only matchup guy, which I don't think fares well for what he is. I think he needs to come in and face multiple batters, but he walked a lot of guys, didn't look like he had a lot of control over his stuff, and maybe his confidence is starting to wane. Like, that's concerning, but we'll see how he rebounds going into the next series.
Yeah, I mean, I'll react to that Ottavino thing first. That like I was very frustrated watching him for the last I'm not X amount of time, right? The last big chunk of the regular season, like because and I don't know if it's like a National League versus American League. He's playing pressure games for, he doesn't have much experience in those types of games, like whatever it may be. But he's been kind of nibbling. He's been very frustrating to watch, and like it's definitely weird that Boone would make him like the righty specialist. He brought him in to face Nelson Cruz, I think, right? He was kind of nibbling. He's got the tremendous breaking balls and movement on his pitches, but it's just really weird. And this is a situation, honestly, that I just feel cries out for Dellin Betances, and it sucks um, that he's gone because Dellin Betances is a guy who could come in and get a strikeout almost whenever you need it. Like,
Yeah, remember
so
we talked about midseason how the Yankees could survive in the postseason with 3 or 4 good innings from their starters because you
yeah,
had Green and Betances and Canely and Ottavino and Britton and Chapman, and you could literally just mega arm bullpen 2/3 of the game. And Ottavino looks like he's taken a step back for now, and of course he can rebound in the next series. And losing Dellin is a big hit to what we thought we had. No, the bullpen is still in great shape, but I
yeah.
definitely agree that losing Dellin was it's showing how big of an impact it truly is.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely he's not the first person I go to, and I've had my own issues with the Kane Lees and the Britons, but those guys rounded into form mostly. Kane Lee struggled for a bit at the end of the season there, but all their recent returns have been pretty good. And Ottavino just has this weird thing, right? He's just nibbling or he's whatever he's doing, but it's just very strange, and I'd be kind of nervous, right? If you had a similar situation like a couple runners on base, or I'd be very nervous to see him come into a ball game under those circumstances. Um, I'll react to your other stuff though, because I thought that Gary Sanchez and Didi, even if they weren't getting hits, right? Like Didi especially, you could see he was really trying to grind out of the slump that he was in, and the pedigree, the playoff pedigree, right? You could think of so many moments, right? The the Twins home run in 2017. He hit those 2 home runs against Corey Kluber. Like, he's had such a hand in all these moments that you had faith. And it was so great to see him come through. Gary had, like I said, he had that hard hit single. He had moments where he thought, like, oh man, Gary, you could just get a hold of one. Like, but you could, the one thing that I guess you could say, experts would say is indicative of some coming big hits is just the good at bats that they're seeing the ball. So
Right.
Gary definitely has that going for him. And I'll transition, I guess, um, to Giancarlo Stanton because
Mm-hmm.
he had a pretty good series in that regard as well. Um, and if you contrast it with last year, like, um, what all you really needed to do was what? Just throw a breaking ball, throw it outside, throw it in the dirt, and he would be hacking at it. Like, and the Twins pitchers throughout the series tested him, right? They threw breaking balls, they threw outside pitches, and he spat on them. And in game one, he took what, 3 walks?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, and he worked a couple good at bats. He had the long sacrifice fly in what was it, game two, I think. Either
It
way,
was
like,
two, yeah.
um, I think, and I've seen it written about a couple times. That he seems like he's poised, right? He could play a huge role in this series because, and we could dive into it more in the, I guess, when you call it the preview. But the Yankees have upgraded, the Astros have obviously upgraded, but the Yankees, Giancarlo Stanton, having him in the lineup could play a huge role for them in this coming series.
Yeah, and I guess just to close out, a few injury oddities at the end of game three. You had Zach Britton twisting his ankle, covering first base on a very nice play that ultimately stifled what could have been a late inning rally. He was pulled out of the game, just precautionary. They didn't even send him for tests. He's going to be fine. And then Chapman got hit in the wrist or the hand or whatever it was. It was just pitching hand, but with a bottle, I don't know, glass bottle, beer bottle, whatever it may be. But he had like this huge ice pack bandage on. I'm sure they just wanted to reduce the swelling right away and not let it blow up. But again, he's going to be fine too. Cashman said that we went to like dab him up. Chapman had a big smile on his face, even though he had the bandage. So I think they'll be
And he
okay there.
actually posted on his Instagram account with, he was there with like one of his various, I don't know, health or wellness type people. And he just said, he goes, I'm going to, straight from the horse's mouth, pretty much. He goes, yeah, I'm fine. Like his hand got banged on a bottle, but he said it himself. He said he's absolutely fine. So
Yeah.
I'll wipe the sweat away from our brow for that.
And then one wrinkle as we look forward to the American League Championship Series is what's going on with Aaron Hicks? I mean, it was rumored, I think, first broke Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe. We're recording this Friday night. But Aaron Hicks sitting at home. The Yankees told him, you know what, just it's fine. We're good. Recover. We'll sit you down for the year. Come back ready for spring training. And he's thought, like, my wrist or my elbow feels good. Let's try throwing. They told him not to throw, and he defied the trainers and did anyway. So much so that he sent them a video recording, and they're like, "Okay, come to Tampa, come to the workout facility. We'll check you out." And he did, and he looked good there. And the past few days, he's been working out with the team at Yankee Stadium while the ALDS was still going on. So who knows what's going to go on with him? I think the quote from Boone like a day or two ago was he could be starting, he could be on the bench, he could not make the roster at all. So like basically any of the scenarios, it was the most vanilla answer ever. But I think I heard something online say that it's looking more likely that he may actually start game one of the ALCS. Like how wild would that be? And more importantly, if he was to start, who do you take out of the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at this point, I'd say really nervous about making wholesale changes to a lineup that just swept through a series against a really pretty good team. So, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm pretty torn on it. Like, because the simplest thing to do, right? You put in Aaron Hicks and you sit down Guardy or you sit down Giancarlo. Obviously, you're not sitting Aaron Judge, but that's the easiest, most painless way to do it. Except in that scenario, you'd be sitting down one Guardy, who's been the Yankees' best player probably for like a month and a half.
Y'all heard that, right? Everyone listening
I
heard
did it. I
Z
said it.
say
It's
that
not
Brett
the
Gardner
first
has been their
time.
best player.
Look, I gave him love on one of our recent podcasts. And it's fine. Just rub it in. I don't care. Um, Guardy, you'd be sitting down their best player for about a month and a half, and Giancarlo, who has he had he hasn't played and he was hurt and all that type of stuff. But you know what? He's a National League MVP, so it's obviously foolish to sit a guy like that who's that incredibly talented. Um, but I'm just nervous about it because you can put him in center, you could put Guardian left, and then you can put Giancarlo in DH, and then you could, who knows, right? I feel like the way I kept
And
going
taking
over it
bats
in my
away
head,
from Gio, maybe like that's the
yeah, like
thing.
I kept going over it in my head, and the scenario I kept coming back to is like you put Edwin at first, and then you put DJ at third, and then you sit Gio, he gets the short straw. I just don't like it. Like I love Aaron Hicks, and maybe based on the matchups, you sit Guardy or sit someone else, and then it's easy to slot him in. But like I'm not sure that I'd want to mess around too much with the lineup that was really good last series. So like, and the thing about it, I guess, as it relates to Hicks, is that he just wasn't hitting when he got hurt, and maybe who knows how long the elbow injury was annoying him or whatever, but he really wasn't hitting very well. And he takes pitches, and he's a switch hitter, and he has a tremendous cannon for an arm in the outfield, and that's all great. But like, we're going to need to hit against this Houston team, and I'm just concerned about having him just kind of walk off the couch and be like, "Oh, by the way, I'm fine, but I'm going to be playing in the American League Championship Series for my first game action in whatever 2 months, month."
Yeah, I agree. I think as far as his elbow injury, it was pretty clear that it happened on a throw. I don't think it was bothering him for days or weeks in advance and affecting his hitting. I agree that he hasn't had any big league at bats, and you can't just throw him into a lineup in the biggest series of the year to this point. But one thing about Aaron Hicks is that he is still a Gold Glove caliber outfielder, and John Carly didn't look great in the outfield. For whether it's the knee still bugging him a little bit, or the fact that he's just hasn't been out there, running around in
He's
shape
definitely
for
not
the
the
last
best
6 months.
fielder.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw the method that the Yankees were doing all throughout the LDS, right? Giancarlo plays 6 innings, gets 3 at bats. They put in Maben, and I think no disrespect to Maben, he's a good outfielder. He had some moments as well, but I mean, Aaron Hicks is far and away a premier outfielder compared to Cameron Maben. So I think you could
Yeah,
do the same thing, especially in games where you have the lead, and you don't necessarily need Giancarlo's bat in there at that point, and you value defense more. You have an outfield of Judge, Hicks, and Gardner for the last 2 or 3 innings to get the last few outs of the game. I think that has a lot of value. I don't agree with putting him in the starting lineup, and I don't think they will. Just
yeah.
because you're
Maybe
going to force feed him
something.
4 at-bats a night, 4 or 5 at-bats a night, and he hasn't faced major league pitching in 2 months.
Yeah, I think that's something that even now I feel like we all heard the name and got like super confused and hyped and like maybe got carried away. Like I think what you just said is pretty realistic scenario where they just spot him. They play him like as a defensive replacement, like maybe a pinch runner or wherever they need to. But like because he's a very capable player, he's a willing, aggressive base runner. He's pretty quick. He's not a bad base stealer. Like he can do a lot of things and still affect the game without starting. Where I mean, Giancarlo didn't face pitching for too much of the season, but he's more ahead of probably where Hicks is. And like I said a few minutes ago, I think Giancarlo is poised. I think he's seeing the ball really well and has the potential to have some, big hits in this series where I wouldn't want to take that out just because Hicks is, you know, a quote unquote a starter or, a better outfielder. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think that changing the lineup that dramatically to get him back to where he usually is, which is a starting center fielder, would not it's just not a good idea in my opinion. It's too much change just for that one player.
Yeah, and we agree that we all agree that Gardner batting third is a little weird, but you know what? They scored 23 runs in 3 games, so I mean, it's working, so I'll allow it. One last note on Hicks, and then we can move ahead to the actual game previews against the Astros. If he was to be even if he was just to make the roster, regardless of whether he starts or not, I mean, whose spot does he take? Jack Curry was on with Bart Scott and Maggie Gray this afternoon on WFAN, and he was actually talking about that, and he thinks that it might be a Tyler Wade who is the fall guy, as opposed to people were rumored that maybe Maben, they may take an extra bench player and then cut a pitcher. I mean, the cleanest way is, if Sabathia gets on, and we could talk about him as well. CC probably takes Tyler Lyon's spot, but if they want to carry one less pitcher, they can go ahead and just slot in Hicks. But if they want to keep a 13-man pitching staff, then probably Tyler Wade is the one who pays the price. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, Glaber and Didi kind of cover each other in the infield. Gio and DJ are kind of corners only. I do like Tyler Wade's flexibility, both infield and outfield, and his speed. But I mean, if you're going to have to fit a guy like Aaron Hicks on, I don't see them taking Cameron Maven off the roster. I mean, he even in a pinch hit situation had a home run in Game 3. So he's a good guy to have on the roster and have available as needed. Moving forward to the actual games, we officially got our starting rotation just about an hour before we went live here. So Game 1 is going to be Zach Greinke versus Masahiro Tanaka. Game 2, Justin Verlander on regular rest, unfortunately, because he didn't look good at all on 3 days rest against Tampa Bay. It'll be Justin Verlander versus James Paxton. And then Game 3 at Yankee Stadium will be Luis Severino versus Garrett Cole. And I have a quote here saved that came up right before we went live. It's from Aaron Boone talking about Garrett Cole. And I mean, there's really nothing to say other than, like how unbelievable he was in the ALDS against Tampa Bay. But the quote from Aaron Boone says, he looked like he aged out or something. Like, check his birth certificate. He's like the kid still pitching in Little League that was too good for the league. So, like the Danny Almonte. Is that what it was? I don't know. The kid like 20 years ago who was pitching no hitters because he was
Danny
like 15.
Almonte, the 14-year-old pitching against 11-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's how Boone compared Garrett Cole. Obviously, there's no age brackets in the major leagues, but I mean that's how he looks right now. And I think the only thing that we have going in our favor is that we get him on the road, and that definitely plays in our favor. But I mean, those three. I mean, that's the pitching troika that we were afraid of when Astros went out and got Zach Greinke. I don't think people projected him to be the Game 1 starter. Thank you, Tampa Bay, for making that a reality. But when they went out and got Zach Greinke, it's like they have those three guys. That's it. The season's done. Doesn't matter what the Yankees do. Just give the Astros the pennant now. That backs the Yankees Twitter. So it's not going to be easy by any means. But how do we feel about Game 1 facing Zach Greinke and potentially be able to steal home field advantage and take an early 1-0 lead against and not having to face JV or Cole in the process?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty much the best case scenario given the hand that we're dealt here. Like, kudos to Tampa Bay because they're a very good team, and not just to say like, oh, we need you to just ride it out and help us out here. Like, they could have won, and they took it to the limit, and it didn't work out. But the backup of that is that we do have as favorable scenario as we could get. Right, you don't get to see Cole until Game 3, which is, he's the one I'm scared of most. He just looks like an absolute monster. Mm-hmm. And, but, Greinke, he's a very good pitcher in his own right, but he has a career postseason ERA of about 4.5. So
his last three or four starts, I believe, is over 9. So he looked very pedestrian against Tampa Bay in Game 3. Again, that was on the road. I know he has better home road splits, as most pitchers do. But even if you go back to, I believe it was the wild card game in 2017, maybe it was whenever it was Arizona versus Colorado. He got smacked around in that game too, and Arizona won that game because they put up huge runs early against John Gray, I want to say. But Greinke almost gave it all back. He looked bad in that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's to have Houston have these three guys and get to face Greinke is the best case scenario for the Yankees. Verlander is Justin Verlander. The Yankees know Justin Verlander. He didn't look great the other night, and but I mean, I think they can beat these guys. It's not gonna be an easy game. It's gonna be stressful and horrible to watch probably, but they can beat these guys. And starting with Greinke, go out there in Houston and beat him. He's not coming off a good start. I don't know if it's just the way he is, but he was very weird in his interview today. I don't know.
And even before Game 3 too, when he was interviewed in Tampa Bay before Game 3, like how do you feel about your first start with the Astros, with the chance to close out the series? He's just like, I don't know, okay, I'm gonna go out and pitch. It's like, what is that?
Yeah, like I really don't know what that's all about. If that's just, if he's like, I don't know, Greg Popovich or Marshawn Lynch, or he just doesn't like talking to the media. But like, it's not like, the Justin Verlander confidence, or he's just maybe that's just the way he is. But like, I feel like if I was a Yankees player and you were trying to like look for a thing, like smell blood in the water, I would have watched that press conference and been like, hey, like maybe he's not comfortable in Houston or on this stage or whatever it may be. I think, Aaron Boone has to throw his absolute best. It's the league championship series, so it seems like a silly thing to say, but he just has to throw his absolute best and try and steal game one in Houston, and then
Mhm.
just get home.
Yeah, and I mean, Verlander allowed a lot of home runs this year. I'm not going to say that they're just going to tee off against him, because any realistic fan believes in our bats, but you expect Verlander to pitch into the seventh inning. If we could keep that game close, or even have him leave with the game tied by chance, I like our bullpen versus their bullpen. If you could steal a game that Verlander or Cole or both by some chance pitch in, and not necessarily, they don't even have to be the ones who take the loss, right? I mean, you just have to stay
Win
in
the
the
game.
game.
Just
Yeah,
win.
I mean, so you're looking at guys like, I believe it's going to be Paxton and Severino who are going to match up with them in 2 and 3, and also potentially 6 and 7. If those guys can keep the games close, I like our odds with our bullpen, and I like our offense against their bullpen. You may have to steal a game in the late innings that way, but I mean, that's October baseball, right? I mean, it's
I
going
mean,
to be ugly. It's going to be stressful. It's going to take years off our life. But if you can do that, I mean, you don't have to go out and score 5 runs off Verlander in the first inning. If you can, phenomenal. But there's avenues to win games without that scenario.
yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Like these are the two best teams. People said it all year long. Like Houston, they look great. Like Yankees had a really good record against teams with winning records this year. Like that was the one thing that I'd say, if anything. Obviously, people are going to draw parallels back to 2017. Like that's the biggest thing in my mind, in my eyes. Like the maturation of this particular group, right? The Judges and the Stantons and Gary and Glaber and whoever else, right? Stanton wasn't here, but that particular core group, the maturation, just going from the plucky underdogs, right? No one expected them to make it to the LCS in 2017, but doing that and then going to this front running, they beat everyone. They win series. They barely lost any series, right? Whoever comes in and they beat them, and they beat the Red Sox a lot this year. Like any good team, right? They were competitive in all those games and all those series. So, like, this is the matchup we were all waiting for. And Houston's a good team, but the Yankees are a good team too. And I think they can win this series. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in 4 or 5 games, as much as I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in 6 or 7 games.
Right,
Which is
right. And that's the thing. If you can win in 4, 5, or 6 games and just avoid having to face Cole in a do or die game in Houston, I mean that's it right there. And you even remember 2017, we took a 3-2 lead back to Houston, and they cleaned up on home turf. And I'd like to avoid that scenario if at all possible. Of course, that requires us winning at least 1 of 2 in Houston, and then not losing any game in New York, which is a tall order. But um,
Right.
anything to avoid facing Cole in a Game 7 scenario. Because look what he did last night with his team's back up against the wall. He went out and he pitched 8 innings, dominate. Like Boone said, it didn't even look like he was playing people in his own league, right? It looked like he was up there against high schoolers, just mowing them down. And Tampa, um, they're a gritty group, but they're not, a full lineup of established vets, the caliber of Houston or us or Boston or LA or someone like that. So we'll see how much it varies going from facing some major league hitters, like good guys like Willie Adames, G-Man Choi, Tommy Pham. These guys all had good years. And I'm not going to take anything away from them, but I think our lineup is a whole other animal, and I'm curious to see how that dichotomy, plays off for when Cole's on the mound.
Yeah, I mean that, and it's not necessarily going to play in right away. What I was going to say, like to throw it back yet again, we're going to be doing this forever. To throw it back to 2017, if I had to sum up the series in a few short words, I would just say score in Houston, right? Like they were totally incapable of doing that in 2017. The home game won every single game. Home team won every single game of that series, and they got kind of smacked around. They didn't look really competitive in the first two games of the series in Houston. They went home and it was totally different. And then they went back to Houston for game 7 and they just went to sleep, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just yeah, I mean Tampa Bay, it's obviously impressive. They won 90 games back in 2018 and they were just really good. They made it to with one game of the LCS. So, but that's not Aaron Judge and Edwin and Gary and the guys. Like it's not that. And I think more than anything, it'll just be their ability to put stress on these guys to work long at bats, right? The Gardner type 8-9 pitch at bat that he's so good at putting together. Gary had a couple of those. Aaron Judge has got the eye. Like all the guys, right? Just put together those at bats. Make them work for these. Don't let them go up there and just look at strike 1 and strike 2, and then you have to flail and like you just make them work for it. And I think that I don't know. I just think they can beat these guys. It's not, there's a lot of formula to it, but there's also some feel to it. And I just I'm not scared because Yankees have risen to the occasion against these type of teams throughout the season.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean it's one of those scenarios where you could see Houston, being the behemoth that they are, but you can also see us, totally rising to the occasion where we're not the underdogs, quote unquote, anymore. I mean, we will be the underdogs in this series, if for no other reason than home field advantage and the fact that they had a better regular season record. But I think these two teams are about as even as they can get. So, I mean, you can see our bats getting shut down just because we haven't faced pitchers like they have. But you can also see our bats giving their pitchers problems in a way that no other team has. So it really, really just remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean,
I actually wanted to do a thing where, if you had to pick one player, pitcher, batter, whatever, if you had to pick one player who is, in your eyes, the most important person in this series, who would it be? I'll give you some time to think it out here, and I'll go first. For me, it's Masahiro Tanaka. Not only because he takes the ball in game 1, but by giving him the ball in game 1, they also give him a start back at Yankee Stadium where he's been absolute nails throughout his career in the postseason. Tanaka, I don't know how Zach Greinke is going to pitch in game 1, but if Tanaka can go out there and shove and shut down a very potent Houston offense and give our team a chance to win, like I said before, taking game 1 could be the biggest momentum shift in the entire series. Again, I mean, that's not to say, oh, that's it, we win game 1, the whole series is in the bag, but that's a huge game changer when right off the bat you have a series lead and you've taken back home field advantage. And remember, neither of these teams has ever trailed in the postseason this year. Not in an individual game, but actually been down in the series. The Yankees won 3 straight. Houston was up 2-0. Tampa Bay came back to tie it, and then Houston won. So no team is in a series deficit. So whoever wins game 1 will put the opponent in a situation they haven't been in yet. So Tanaka in game 1, and then also back in game 5. I have no idea where the series will be through 4 games, but whatever he can do in Game 5 will be monumental towards giving us a chance to ultimately go to the World Series, or if he's not so strong, basically the writing on the wall that Houston will have this locked up. So you really don't know where it's going to be 5 games from now. You don't know where it's going to be 2 games from now. But Tanaka is my guy who I think is going to have the biggest impact one way or the other in our success this year in the series.
Yeah. That's definitely a good point. I feel like we made so much about our lineup versus their guys that there's probably a lot to be talked about, like their lineup versus our guys. But I guess to answer your direct question, I would say, yeah, I mean, I've been puffing him up. I gotta say Giancarlo Stanton, man.
Yep. Yeah, I figured that's where you were going.
It's easy to say like Aaron Judge or Didi or whoever, Chapman, like
you expect those guys to.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what you're gonna get from them, right?
Stanton, I feel like he's so close, man. Like, and it's weird because last year he had 38 and 100 plus RBI. Like, it's not bad, right? Obviously, his performance in the postseason left a lot to be desired, and this regular season was incredibly disappointing for him with all the injuries. Like, I just think he looked really good, man, and he didn't necessarily hit a home run or get a bunch of hits, like, but I just feel like he's so poised, man. He's so close, and he spat on all those pitches. They were trying to, bait him into flailing at those pitches, and he didn't do it. And I feel like if he's seen the ball like that, eventually he's just gonna connect. And oh my god, like that's,
Yeah. Can you imagine like how much of how big of a moment that would be? Late in the game, Stanton hits like a huge game momentum shifting home run. I mean, Yankees fans far and wide on talk show, on the radio, on Twitter, people I see at work are
like, I don't
ready
know,
with pitchforks and torches, and he can change that narrative real quick.
like I don't know if he reads it. I don't even care. I don't know if he cares to read it. Like, but I just think he needs it. I think whether or not he's looking at his Twitter comments, like Kevin Durant does, like I don't think he really cares, but I think he's aware of it. And I mean, A-Rod would probably tell you, right? He was the high price guy with expectations for a bunch of years before he had that epic 2009 postseason. Like, it wears on you, and I think he just wants it so bad that, and I feel like he had so many good at bats that he's just poised, and even it could be like a late inning, just absolute monster solo home run. Like, I feel like he just needs to connect, and I feel like he could have a monster series if he gets a hit early, game 1. If he gets a hit early in the series, that it could set him off, and we know how he can go off.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a home run. I mean, that's all what we expect from him. A guy who challenged the non-steroid inflated all-time home run record just 2 years ago. You expect that when he makes a big impact in the game, it's going to be via the home run. But bases loaded, 1 out, us down a run in the 7th inning. He hits a single in the gap that scores 2 runs. I mean, like that would forever change his legacy. A hard hit base knock like that. So,
like, you saw it too. He was on base. He got walks. He was rounding the bases. He was hyped. Teammates driving in runs. Like, he's in it. He's here. He's in it. He wants it. Like, he hasn't necessarily connected with that hit yet, but it's. I feel like it's coming, and this is the moment for it to happen. And I feel like he's so on the cusp of it happening.
Right.
That's my guy.
That we will be so hype. If that were to happen, I'm ready for that too.
Dude, I mean, he's just one of those guys though. Like Judge too, right? They hit these monster home runs. Like, but Stanton's home runs are different, dude. Like, so tip of the cap to Giancarlo. I'm putting a lot on him this series, and I hope that he can. Oh my god, I hope that he just more than one would be great, but I'd settle for one, right? Just an absolute bomb. Set the tone for the series.
So I don't think it makes sense for us to give our series predictions. I mean, we've already beat the horse dead here. That these two teams are too evenly matched, that the series is going to be too unpredictable. It doesn't make sense for us to say, oh, who's going to win and how many games. I mean, we're going to
Like,
do just like we did for the LDS. We're going to do post game recaps each at a time, and we can kind of get an idea where the series is going to go after game two, after game three, whatever it may be. But um, I think we're blowing hot air if we say here today, oh, I think the Yankees are going to win in 6. Oh, Astros in 5. Whatever it may be. Like, there's no need for us to do that.
yeah, I feel like that's a prediction better served for when you like. If I have to make a cross sport reference, we've kind of panned those on this podcast before, but like a boxing match, you got a couple guys that come out in round one and kind of feel each other out. They're like once once we see game one, right? Once we see how they are under the pressure, under the lights, you know, maybe you can make a prediction then. But until then, like people like have knocked Brian Cashman, right, for the pitching and for a lot of other things. Frankly, I think it's pretty silly. But I mean, I feel like he's put together about as good of a team, right? If you had he has to know in 2017 and 2018 that Houston's the guys that are going to be there, and I feel like he's put together a team, and this has been on his mind, right? How am I going to beat Houston in the LCS to get to the World
Mm-hmm.
Series? Like,
Yep.
this is the team, and they didn't have the best record, but the Yankees are a really good baseball team.
It's wild. I think this is arguably the best Yankees team we've seen this decade, and that includes the 2009 World Series champions. I mean, they won 103 games as well, but I feel like this team has a different feel to them. Of course, there was no Houston Astros standing in our way back in 2009. In fact, the Astros were in the National League at that point, and also a perennial bottom feeder. The point of the matter means is that
Yeah,
this is probably the best team we've seen in a very, very long time. It's just unfortunate that there's another equally as good team that still stands in our way. But
like
this is it. We threw all of our chips on the table.
if I had to draw a parallel, I guess to 2009, like maybe there wasn't like as good, right? There wasn't like a Houston caliber team like opposing them in the American League, but like they played the Angels that year.
Angels had us psychologically.
Yeah, like the Angels were the team. Like the Angels had their number for a lot of years, and I feel like we were also nervous, even if they weren't on paper like a comparable, quote unquote, comparably talented team or whatever. But like Angels had their number for a lot of years, and beating them that year was just such a relief that like. Not that this is like a years long thing. It's been 2 years. The Yankees and Houston are obviously very good, but like I feel like it's that kind of thing, right? And just in general, it's kind of selfish to be like, oh, well, how dare we have to face another team? Like, it's the postseason. This is the best. So
Mhm.
you're going to have to beat good teams and the best teams. And not to say it's more satisfying, but it's very satisfying when you beat good teams and you can confidently say, like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we were the best. We were the best in the American League because we beat the best.
Like if the Yankees were to go to the World Series, they would have had to take down two other 100 win teams. And I can't recall the last. I think the last time they had to do that was 2001, right? When they had to go through the Moneyball A's in the first round and then the 116 win Mariners in the LCS. I think that's the only other time in history that a team has had to beat two other 100 win teams to go to the World Series. Um, I'm sure there's another one, whether it be us or not, that I'm not thinking of. But that validates everything you're saying. That if you're gonna raise that trophy 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, that's forever stamped that you took out a 107 win team. That by all accounts, everyone picked to win before the season, during the season, and at the start of the postseason. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. And I guess this has been, I guess I teased it earlier in the show. It's been bugging me for a minute here. So I'm just going to say, Um, if I had to throw out another X factor, I'll say Luis Severino because you said Tanaka. Obviously, it's incredibly important to get off to the start, but like Severino, man, he just looked like the walks are concerning, but his stuff looked so good, man. His like, and he doesn't have innings on his arm, so maybe he's fresh and healthy. But dude, like his stuff looks so electric, and
Yeah,
I
and
think
imagine
back
how
to
loud
like,
that stadium is going to get.
oh,
He
and
pitches
that's the
game three
thing,
at
like
home.
Severino. And I mentioned it a couple minutes ago, right? Houston, where in 2017 they looked so strong at home, and then they came up, and they're even on record. There was interviews, right? They said like that stadium, Yankee Stadium, was crazy, dude. Like they said it unnerved them because of how. And I was even there for Game 4, the comeback game, coincidentally. Like that place was raucous, dude. People knocked the new Yankee Stadium for not being the old Yankee Stadium, pretty much, but that place was so good. It's as much of a home field advantage as you could possibly ask for. And Severino, man, that fastball feeding off that crowd, he's got that big game guy in him. He's risen to the occasion. The 2017 against the Indians, like, man, I feel like if all the chains are off, if he's unleashed, dude, if they just go out there and let him go, man, we could see a special ass start from Severino, man. I'm very high on Severino for this series.
That's one can only hope, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, um, well, I mean, like, I'll channel it right here, right? Ric Flair, man. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and Houston is the man.
Let's go get them. I'm excited. We'll be here. We'll be back with you guys on, I guess, tomorrow night after Game 1. We'll probably record. I guess that game will probably end around midnight because all these playoff games last 4 hours. But hopefully, we have the full crew with us by then, and we'll break down Game 1. Again, it's going to be Zach Greinke versus Masahiro Tanaka. I would expect the Yankees to roll out the same starting lineup. Don't see why the Astros wouldn't roll with their best lineup as well. And the gloves will finally come off, and we'll see what happens.
Let's go get them.